Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Triple N Media. I am Dr. NIK NIKAM, and all our programs are video streamed through YouTube and Google Plus. And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have more than 2,000 subscribers with more than 1,000 videos accenting our experience here in the United States with more than 1.5 million views. We also have a Facebook page, which is Triple N Media, where we bring you the latest buzz from around the world, and we would like you to please visit our Facebook page and like it. Today I am going to be talking to a friend of mine, and he is one of the talk show hosts for NPR, and he's going to tell us about his interesting job, and we're going to talk about two important topics. One is in the Atlantic magazine. His podcast was listed number 2 out of 50 podcasts selected, and maybe we'll learn a lot about his work, podcasting, and also a second project, which will be the South Asian American Digital Archives. Ladies and gentlemen, my special guest is Arun Venugopal, and he works for NPR. Arun, welcome to Triple N Media.
Great to be here. Thank you, Nick.
Okay, give us a little bit about your background.
Well, I work for WNYC. It's a station in New York City. It's an NPR member station, and it's been around since the 1920s, actually. So it goes back pretty far. I'm a reporter there.
Like the days of the original radio stations.
That's right, like the original days of radio.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the original stations. It's been there on the front lines of a lot of important news events. The attack on Pearl Harbor was first reported by WNYC. We were just blocks away from the September 11th attacks in 2001. So we've seen a lot of history.
That's interesting. There. So I guess at that time there was no NPR TV.
NPR has always been a radio focus. WNYC, my station, until the 90s, it was both a TV station owned by the city.
I see.
And a radio station. Then Giuliani, Mayor Giuliani, decided he wanted to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And then a group of private, I guess, investors, they decided to make it into a nonprofit, and so it's had a pretty long and interesting history.
No, what I was referring to was whether did we have PBS TV at that time?
The PBS, I guess, is from goes back quite a while. Maybe it's in the 60s. I can't remember exactly.
I see, yeah.
But it's always been separate from NPR.
Separate from NPR, yeah. Okay. How did you get into NPR radio?
So it's an interesting story. I was actually, before this, I was a print reporter. I wrote for different places, including I was for a few years was with India Abroad.
I see, yeah.
And Rediff.com, and I wrote for various publications in India, like Outlook India. Economic Times, as well as places in America in the mainstream press, and then it was just one of those chance meetings in New York. I was on a panel discussion at a restaurant, a Maharaja restaurant.
Is that right?
And with the South Asian Journalists Association, SAJA, which I have a long, relationship with. It's been a big part of my life as a journalist and socially as well. And then somebody just said, "Hey, I'm looking for people who can tell the stories of different ethnic communities."
I see.
For NPR and for the radio audience, for public radio. And so before I knew it, I was telling these stories, and then I got a job, and I've been there for about 11 years now.
Is that right? 11 years?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. It looks like we have something in common, because I started Triple N Media about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And in a span of 3 years, I have personally created over 1,000 videos. Even your dad has been in one of those programs. About accenting the Indian experience here in the United States.
Yeah.
We covered every festivities, every associations, non-profit organizations, and every kind of activities in our community. We have highlighted. So I guess we sort of have something interesting in common.
Think so. I mean, my experience doing what I do, even though it's in the mainstream, I still have a very deep, strong connection to the Indian community, to the South Asian communities. My parents live next to the Sri Meenakshi temple here in Houston, in Pearland. And, I remember when I was in college, I was helping organize youth conferences and going to all the cultural events and all that. My sisters were involved in Bharatanatyam dance with Ratna Kumar. So ever since I was tiny, for me, the relationship to community is pretty important.
You had a rich cultural upbringing. That's what makes us the foundation for all the things you are able to share with the mainstream media.
Absolutely.
How many people work for your radio station?
I think it's 300 and 350 in that range. It's pretty big. It's one of the biggest producers of audio content in America.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I thought a radio station, I thought it would be like a 1.5 person.
No. This is a big operation.
Is that right?
Because you have, of course, the people who listen in the New York City area over the radio. But a lot of people nowadays, they're listening from all over the world to our podcast. We have podcasts called Radio Lab, Freakonomics, Studio 360, On the Media, many different things like that.
So you have a lot of different subdivisions because you have such a huge
we have a lot of radio producers.
Of population.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the podcast that you're involved with, for which you have received, great accolades from the Atlantic magazine. Tell us about that.
So it's called the United States of Anxiety. It was a podcast that began running, I think in September, about 4 or 5 months ago. We put a lot of reporting and research into this. We focused on a specific area of the country, Long Island, but we were trying to tell a story about something much bigger, which is this moment in time in terms of the politics of it, in terms of the Trump phenomenon, in terms of sort of the increasing frictions we're witnessing between, parts of white America and immigrants and communities of color. We're trying to understand why people were supporting Trump, what were the experiences that they were having and they were leading to that. So we finished sort of an initial run.
I see.
It's unclear whether there'll be another season or not. Hopefully there will be. But I'm actually doing a road trip, possibly doing a road trip in the next few weeks, leading up to the inauguration for the United States of Anxiety. So this is what we did. And I think what we try to do is give a very humane and sympathetic sort of portrayal of the people in these communities.
So you sort of provided a channel for people from all walks of life to express their views.
So this was a very carefully produced.
I see.
This was.
Was this a call-in talk show or?
The initial episodes were not call-ins. They were, very carefully produced and written. We did a lot of interviews with people. After the first several episodes, actually what we would do is we'd air an episode, and then right after that we'd have a call-in as well. So we might tell you a story, for instance. You may or may not know that there is a very high, there's a huge opioid and heroin epidemic, right? Across the country. It's happening in a lot of different communities. It's specifically hitting white Americans.
Yes.
It's a terrible crisis. And it's certainly happening in Long Island amongst many other places. And some of us who've studied this very carefully, we've seen a correlation between the places where this drug crisis is the worst and the places where they're most likely to support Donald Trump.
I see.
To some extent, it's understood with the research that's happened that those places feel like everything's kind of falling apart, that they're not being paid attention to, being cared for, and
like
they
the
want
forgotten
some change.
Americans.
Like a forgotten America. I think that is true. So I think that's one of several major issues.
So, like, what other things did you discover? Obviously, there was the mid-American white men or the population who felt like they were left behind by, I would say, past administrations.
I certainly
let down.
I think that there are some broad trends that we're still trying to understand, but certainly there is this income inequality that's been talked about for some years. I think you're experiencing that in some of these communities with some of this population. Certainly not all working class Americans voted for him, but some of them feel like things are not as good as they used to be. they're kind of either in these communities or they see these communities around them where they're kind of crumbling.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of voters who actually are doing quite well who voted for Trump. And I think for them, there's also the issue of feeling like, the country is changing in a way that they don't feel part of that.
Let me give you an example, because one of my doctor friends, he lived in like rural areas, and he told me that a lot of these people in the rural areas, whom you never see them on the map, in those dots, red dots, these are all hard-working farmers with families and cattle and all these things. These are all the people who also felt like, their voices were not being heard.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons why you saw there was a blanket of red dots all across the areas where you don't even expect the Republicans to even vote for Republican.
Right. No, I mean, I think especially in the industrial Midwest and other regions, you saw a lot of these counties, New York State too, many counties. If you look at the 2012 map and then you look at the 2016 map, it's gone from like a sea of blue in some of these places to a sea of red. I mean, we should be clear. He did not win the popular vote.
I know.
So it's kind of mystifying. How do you make sense of that? Hillary won by several million votes in the popular vote. But the fact is that many of these counties which traditionally voted for Democrats, they saw a lot more, excitement around this candidate. I don't know if excitement is the right word. A lot of them were feeling a great sense of despondency, really. So I think the drug issue, as I mentioned, is one thing. Economically, some of them are not doing that well. Now, if they lose their health care, I don't know how they're going to feel about the kind of change he's promising. I think there's a real sense of confusion.
I think for most middle Americans, it was the jobs that kind of reverberated. Because a lot of these people have been looking for jobs for years. I mean, they can't be retrained, and as a result, they had tremendous challenge getting jobs, and most of the jobs are going out of the country. With all these big corporations, shifting jobs overseas. I think he sort of maybe struck the chords in the mind and hearts of a lot of these people, which probably might have had an effect. Did you get any cultural diversity or something that was a major factor also?
I do think that for some people who voted for Trump, maybe a good deal of them, there's a sense that diversity is something scary, that they see things like Black Lives Matter, and they feel like it's a threat to their own sort of position in America. They see it as sort of like, I guess, undermining their own place in society. They see immigrants moving into their neighborhoods.
That's true, yes.
You have to remember many suburbs, certainly Long Island, which is sort of the original suburbs in America. This is where in the 1940s and 50s, a lot of white Americans left the cities.
I see.
As blacks and Latinos were moving in, a lot of white people left the city.
I see,
This happened elsewhere too.
That's true,
The suburbs were kind of a way of saying, here, come here, just you. Just the white families, come here and live here. Blacks were prevented from moving to these neighborhoods. There's a lot of segregation. And now what's happened is 60 years later, there's more and more immigrants moving to these neighborhoods. Some of them are Latinos, some of them are like us, or, they're Indians or South Asians, they're East Asians. And I think to some extent, they may have friends who are from these different backgrounds, but to some extent they realize our sort of demographic advantage is being lost in a sense. That's
another important point which Donald Trump stressed about all these open borders and open trades are really killing America.
I think that it's there's a lot of different data on things like immigrants. Many of them come here and they work very hard. They're less likely to commit crime. How many people do you know that are actually like that who come to this country? They come from far away. There are certainly people who do bad things from every community and every background. But I think the data suggests that it's actually not, they're not all rapists and criminals like what he said last year about people from Mexico. I think what is worrisome is when you start demonizing immigrants, then you're kind of, as we're seeing in recent weeks, you're kind of suggesting to certain people that it's kind of open season. And I think that's what we're worried about right now is hate crimes and other ways of discriminating against people who are not white Americans.
While we're on the subject of cultural diversity and immigrants and all this, the Brexit was a perfect example of how it got passed because of the same things that we are talking about, because of the immigrants coming in and not being able to assimilate with the main British culture, things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that it's it's a big question of how fast can change happen.
Yeah.
There's also the question of at least in America, which I'm more familiar with the history of immigration in this country, for many years, immigration was sort of prevented.
It was controlled, that means everybody had to have some documentation to come to this country.
Well, so the first immigration restrictions was in the 1880s. It was the Chinese Exclusion Act.
I see.
At the time, America decided, or at least the people in government decided, we don't want people to come from China. And that was 1882. Then after that, there were acts designed against Japanese immigrants and Korean immigrants. There was something called the Gentleman's Agreement. It was an agreement between Japan and America to prevent, this is in the end of the 19th century. Then about 100 years ago, actually exactly 100 years ago, in 1917, there was a major immigration act. It was called the Immigration Act of 1917.
Yes.
And it basically prevented people from a large area of the world. It was called the Asiatic Barred Zone Act.
Yes.
So they decided that we don't want people from India to come, from the Middle East, from other parts of Asia. So that was essentially seen as a way of preventing non-whites from entering the country and threatening the voting power.
I see.
So what they did is, at about 100 years ago, right before this act was passed, they had hearings in Congress. I wrote about this recently in India Abroad. They had congressional hearings based on the impact of people from India and other communities, saying that they were very dirty, that they were diseased, that they stank, and that they didn't assimilate. So that didn't have much input from Indians themselves. But then what they did is they said a lot of malicious things about people from India. There wasn't a huge population. Many of them were in California. But because of those hearings and other hearings like that, they passed a sweeping legislation to prevent people from India and many other countries from coming in. And those Indians who were here, there was actually a major court case, the Supreme Court. It was about a man named Bhagat Singh Thind. In 1923, they decided that he could not become a citizen because he was not Caucasian.
I see.
So there was an argument, is he Caucasian or not? And he was a Sardar, he was a Sikh man. But it was considered a very racially exclusive thing to do. Then until the 1960s, essentially, there was very little immigration from India. Then because of the Civil Rights Act, they essentially opened it up. They said, you can't only let people from Western Europe come here. So we have this very long and complicated history. And so now what we're seeing it partly as a response to that.
So what was your conclusion from your podcast, United States of Anxiety, and what did you deduct that could be applicable or useful in the future?
Well, I think it's still early to tell just how this administration plays out. Certainly what they're saying so far is in response to many of the things he suggested in the campaign itself, coming down to, say, immigration from Muslim countries and all. Now, he said after this recent attacks in Europe, he still wants to prevent immigration from certain Muslim countries. So that may happen.
Yeah.
Of course, it has to play out in Congress. It has to play out in the courts, whether or not it's considered unconstitutional. But as far as my reporting goes, I think, like I said earlier, the main conclusions we saw is these people who are voting for him, they didn't all love him as a person.
I see.
But they feel some sense that they want change.
They wanted a change.
Yeah. So change can happen in a million ways.
I know.
I don't know how much of that change he can address. Like, can he bring back the jobs?
That's right.
I don't know. Can he stop globalization? It's a very difficult thing to do. There's globalization. There's also automation.
Yeah.
All these companies that are trying to change their workers into robots or automation in some manner. These are things that also affect, society and, way of life.
That is true. Yeah. The middle class working people may have challenge finding jobs because the only way all these big companies like Microsoft and Apple can bring jobs back is to use automation to keep the cost down. That means it's going to create a different type of work. That's where you need a lot more technical skills, like using robots, things like that, versus manual skill.
I mean, I think one thing I hear, I'm by no means an expert on IT, but one thing I hear about many of these huge IT companies, Facebook and Twitter and Google, is that compared to companies of an earlier era with similar revenue, they don't employ that many people.
That's
And so huge companies that are making tens of billions of dollars, when you look at Ford or General Motors in decades past, they employed a lot of people.
It was all manual. Everything was manual.
And they had good union salaries.
That's right.
So they could own their houses.
Yeah.
They could settle down, send their kids to college. Now people, they don't have good solid salaries. The minimum wage has fallen behind a lot. They don't have necessarily certain wage protections and all of that. And so having a family, feeling like you can send your kid to college is really expensive.
Really expensive. It's $500,000 to get somebody a graduate degree in this country. This is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody made a very good argument. Instead of wasting that $500,000 for a kid who is only 24 years old, after which he has got no job, if he had put it in a retirement at age 24, by the time he retires, it may be worth $3 to $5 million.
I know. It is really, I've got a kid. She's 15. And, this is something we worry about all the time.
I know.
Is basic quality of life, the right to an education is, it seems so unstable in that way.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching a Triple N Media, and my special guest is Arun Venugopal. He is one of the talk show hosts at NPR. And what's the radio station?
WNYC in New York.
WNYC, so New York City.
That's right.
Okay, there you go. And and all our programs are video streamed through YouTube. And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we have more than 1,000 videos accenting our experience here in the United States. And also we have a Facebook page, which is a Triple N Media or Nano News Network. Somebody asked, how did you pick the word Nano News Network? I said, if you look at the social media, I'll be lucky if I get a nanosecond attention on what I do.
We're all facing the same challenge.
Yeah. That's why I said, maybe let me put down the reality.
Yeah.
And please do like our Facebook page. Okay. Tell us a typical day of yours at NPR.
Well, we may be working on different stories at the same time. Sometimes there might be something that's urgent. You have to go somewhere right away. More likely, my day consists of coming in, doing interviews, going out and interviewing people, trying to put a story which is in response to the current moment. Right now, since the election and going until the inauguration, I'm reporting on what this transition moment, the presidential transition. And so we're talking about...
So will you be able to get into the inner circle during the inauguration?
I don't think so. I'm not really aiming for that, but that's... right now, the transition, what I mean is we're talking more about how there's a lot of policies that are
Yes.
being discussed and debated, immigration and other issues like that. There's also some hate crimes that have been happening. People are worried about their status in this country, things like that. We're reporting on those things, the legal issues surrounding that. It's probably something that's only going to get more heated.
I think so. As we get closer to the inauguration, or in the immediate vicinity of inauguration, we are going to see some, protests or disturbances, because people are people.
Well, there are a lot of activists who are headed to DC for this huge women's march.
That's right. Yeah.
I know people who are helping organize that. I know people who are going for that. There's many busloads of people.
But Donald Trump said that he will be happy to sit down and talk to them.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to bridge. He said a lot of things that
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after the election, he has softened on many issues, and he's acting like a business person, trying to do the right thing for the country. I'm not in favor of Donald Trump. I mean, because there are a lot of things he said and done I don't agree with, but at the same time, now he is our president, so we just have to go with what we have.
Well, I think for some of them, their life is they're seeing direct impacts on their life, whether these are issues dealing with reproductive abortion for women,
that is true,
immigration, healthcare. There's tens of millions of people who could lose their health care if they decide to repeal Obamacare. Are they going to replace it? What is it going to be replaced with? So those are things that are unclear. Immigrants who are worried about whether they're going to suddenly be deported. Now, Obama deported a lot of people.
Yeah.
But Trump is suggesting he may be even more aggressive on that front. And then there's, of course, the issue of safety, which people are just...
Yeah.
I hear from a lot of people who are worried just that they're not going to be feeling safe in the coming months. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to see protests about. Of course, every president has opponents, but this may have a little more than usual.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching a Triple N Media, and my special guest is Arun Venugopal, and he works for NPR in New York City. Okay, let's talk about your next pet project, which is South Asian American Digital Archives. Sounds like my project, because everything I have done is digital.
Yeah.
Everything is on YouTube and Facebook, social media.
Yeah, well, I think we're all doing the same, similar things in terms of... this is called SAADA, S-A-A-D-A, and it's a great project. It's a nonprofit. It's run by a board of directors, including myself, as well as a gentleman by the name of Samip Malik, who is an archivist. He's a trained archivist. And basically, the idea is how can we collect, going back to the early 1900s even before that, what is the history of our community, Indians in America, people from other parts of South Asia, how can we make sure that we don't lose that history?
That's true, yeah.
And also educate each other about this, because like I said earlier, there are all these dimensions of our history that most people don't have it. They don't have a clue.
That's true.
We don't do a good job of training each other about what has happened here in this country, our early days in this country, our predecessors in this country, and so there's all these aspects of that we need to know, educate our children about, and make sure we're part of those conversations.
I can tell you, I have lived through this for the last 3 years because I have interviewed members from every Indian association. We have more than 100 associations in the Houston area. That itself shows how much diversity we have within one country like India. In this part of the world. And I have interviewed every non-profit organization and every temple officials. And it's fascinating because maybe ours is a country of cultural tolerance and cultural understanding. The word cultural diversity itself is a negative word from my perspective. I think we should change that to cultural understanding and cultural harmony. That is more inviting and it's more sort of saying, okay, I'm interested in learning about your culture.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't have to, live in under the same roof.
Well, I think that is part of the challenge. You see, for many years, for instance, when I was young, we didn't we talked about people who are white, we call them Americans.
That's right.
So as if we were not Americans. I think my parents even sort of say the same thing. Now, that itself is sort of a way of misrepresenting, as if certain people are more American than others. Now, what happened is for many years, and I wrote about this in an India Abroad column recently, soon after the election, is that there was a very strong effort to make sure that white Americans were the dominant population and that immigration was restricted and that also voting rights were restricted for people from other populations. So Indians were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to marry white people. So it's a fascinating community in California. For some years, many Punjabis, they married Mexicans.
I see.
In California. And there was a whole community of Mexican Punjabis because they were not allowed to marry outside of those communities. They developed their own cuisine, their own style of... now, many of them, the last ones are sort of dying off, but in the 1910s, 1920s and all, that was the law. Now, what happened also is that, there were some fascinating aspects of our history here. For instance, you might not have known there's something called the Ghadar Party that was based in America. These were revolutionaries who were against the British occupation of India. Many of them were based in America.
I see.
And they were fighting for Indian independence. And at that time, America was petitioned by Britain to not allow this to happen because, of course, Britain didn't want this to go on. So America cracked down on these people who were fighting for Indian independence. So there are all these fascinating dimensions to our community in America. And that's what SADA tries to do, South Asian American Digital Archive, is try to preserve those stories and then, of course, disseminate those stories, tell those stories to the younger generation.
How do you collect all your information and how it is archived?
Well, so Samit Malik, the head of this organization who runs it on a day-to-day basis, he's the main force. And one thing he does and other members of the organization do is they talk constantly to people out there in the community. Say somebody has said, oh, I've been here for 50 years. I have all these photographs and all these documents. Are you interested in archiving that? And they'll have a conversation and talk about what's in the archive. And then they might digitally scan those things and keep it and then allow people to go onto their website and then see those things. And then historians sometimes will also research from those things. They write books, partly drawing upon. There's a recent book that's come out called The Other 1%. It's a very good book about the Indian-American community. And they've credited Samip and Sada with helping them in their research because there's so much...
It's like a huge treasure. Because when I want to do a presentation on YouTube, the first thing I do is go to Google Images and see if I can find a picture that is most appropriate. Because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Then I can add my commentary to make it much more lively.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of us, there's thousands of us in the community, millions literally, who have all kinds of photographs and documents and stories. And so the question is, how can we best
you mentioned photographs, and as part of our NNN media, for the last year or so, I've been taking photographs at various functions and events and all this, and posting them on the Facebook. The one which I did for Pratham, we had about 700 pictures. We posted them. We had more than 45,000 photo views.
Wow!
On Facebook. So by the end of this year, I have more than 100,000 photo views. On our NNN Media Facebook page. And you're right, because these are all the ones which tell the story. Pictures.
We have a book coming out. Sada is publishing a book in the next few months called Our Stories. And that's meant to especially educate younger people. Because if you talk to a young person,
that's right.
they don't have any understanding about the history of our community in this country.
That is true.
They don't know that we were also discriminated against. They don't necessarily understand why we're so successful at this moment in time, the immigration history that's led to these things. And so I think it's important, especially with this era that we're entering into, we all have to be participating in these conversations with as much education as possible.
So you said all the information is stored digitally. Is it in the form of text or videos? Or
many times it depends on what the object is. If it's it might be a photo that's been scanned and then put on the website. There's different kinds of media that we have. So I definitely encourage people to go online, saada.org, saada.org, and to look into the archives, to read the stories. We have a publication, an online publication called Tides. And Tides has really fascinating articles about our history for the last 100, 150 years in this country. Yeah. And it's a great resource.
So, for example, we had Janmashtami. We have been doing this for 20 plus years. Yeah. And I was the first one to do a sort of a documentary of Janmashtami here in Houston, George R. Brown Convention Center. I had put like 6 videos. And just like yours, they are like the archives, the days of our lives. How we lived in this country and how well we carried our traditions and culture and heritage all the way to America from India.
I mean, I think it's fast. I still remember going to my first Janmashtami dance downtown Houston, and there were thousands of people, and I was blown away. I was in college at the time, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, this is fantastic." I mean, I think those celebrations are really, a way of saying, yes, we're Indian, we're American, we're this third thing. We're here and we're present, and I think that's, it's an amazing story how we've gone from this tiny community to something that's, we have governors, we have members of Congress, we have senators and whatnot, and we have, of course, all the doctors, such as yourself, who, who give our community this pride of place here. But we also have all these other dimensions of our story that we need to be aware of and talking about. And I think that's important.
Maybe we can collaborate, and maybe we can get you a link to all this rich material we have from Houston.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Arun, any final thoughts?
No, I've had a great time here. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it. And again, like I said, if anybody, I'd love to, for your help or support with saada.org, saada.org.
Oh yeah, tell us. And if somebody wants to support,
Yeah, we're doing a fundraiser right now. End of the year, we definitely need support because this is real time and energy and expertise that's going to help preserve our stories. So please do go to the website and check it out and, and be part of this effort.
Let's give out the web address again.
It's saada.org, South Asian American Digital Archive, saada.org.
That's beautiful. Arun, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
I mean, you're so engaging. I mean, I can be sitting here and talking for next 8 hours.
I could too. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, you have been watching NNN Media. I'm Dr. NIK NIKAM. And please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and also like our Facebook page, which is NANO News Network. Until next time, this is Dr. NIK NIKAM. We'll see you.